Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Sabbath services. Every week, we're getting closer to the Feast of Tabernacles. We're already receiving the reservation sheets that come back, tell us where you're keeping the feast. And it looks like we're going to have a good turnout in all locations. So today, we're going to hear from a man whose family has been in the church for 4 generations. Okay? And he's going to bring us a message today, a sermonette, and his name is Joe Sanchez.
As we watch the news around us, it seems to continually get more and more alarming as time goes on. And not necessarily from the events themselves, but people's reaction to it or lack of reaction to it is what seems alarming to me. I myself on a regular basis I'm really concerned and flabbergasted by some of the positions people are taking or they're not taking. You know, some of the things that I'm really concerned about, it seems like nobody seems to care. And then other things that people are all concerned about and worked up about, I really don't understand why they're getting upset about it. And so a lot of things that are taking place it's really confusing. For instance, the way that our U.S. federal government, our law enforcement and Congress have been so fixated on the January 6th break-in that cost, a couple $1 million in damages, but at the same time they seem to be completely uninterested in the $2 billion worth of damages and the 25 people that died over the rioting last year. What about, for instance, all the money, time, and effort that has been spent on the pandemic, promoting masks, advertising you wear your masks, you see it on billboards all over the place, promoting the vaccines, paying people to take the vaccines. They're even having lotteries to try and get people. You can win $1.5 million if you get the vaccine here in California, if you're lucky. But at the same time, these same people in the government seem to be completely uninterested in finding out what the cause of the pandemic was in the first place. And they don't seem interested in trying to prevent the next disease to come along. And you're really kind of perplexed by this. This is kind of odd. And especially when it comes to a lot of this gain of function research that was being done at the exact same lab where they were doing coronavirus research. It's really odd that the same individuals that are completely afraid and, you see them driving down the road with 2 masks on alone in their car, they seem to be completely uninterested in learning about this gain of function research. And a lot of it is very confusing for what people believe and don't believe, what's important to them and not important to them. And this other one where the same group of people that are, pro-abortion, pro-homosexual, pro-transsexual, pro-feminist, at the same time are pro-Islam and pro-Palestinian. Because if you demonstrated any of these views or say you had a pride parade in any of these locations, they would pretty much stone you on the spot and they would be given a medal from Allah for doing it, And so when these people have these different positions or don't have these different positions, it's really confusing the way our nation is becoming. And this mentality where we see is really alarming when we see it in the news where people are completely unconcerned about one thing, but they're overly concerned about something else that isn't a problem at all. Things that we feel that aren't a big deal or a huge deal, but things that people wish to be true now becomes reality, whether there's any proof behind it. And much of this self-deception where people want to believe what they want to believe was prophesied long ago by Isaiah, by Christ, by Paul, by many of the prophets. And it's the first thing that Christ warns us about in the Olivet prophecy is, take heed lest anyone deceive you. Many will come in my name saying I am the Christ and will deceive many. And so there's going to be so many deceptions at the time of the end. If it were possible, they would deceive even the very elect. And this is the end time. It's a time of deception. where people believe things that are completely not true, and the things that they should be worried about, they're completely oblivious to. A passage that Fred brought up and explained, which is interesting, is over in Revelation chapter 12 and verse 9. And I like the translation here. It says, and it differs from the King James translation. It said, the great dragon was cast out, the ancient serpent, who is called the devil and Satan, who is deceiving the whole world. This is something that was currently happening at the time that John was having this vision. He was cast down, and his angels were cast down to him. And the Greek word here for deceiving is plano, I believe. And it's in the present active state. So, meaning at the time of the end, when all these deceptions are going around, Satan, the devil, his deceptions will be at their apex. And at the culmination of all these lies, Satan will at that time literally be deceiving the whole world. And we're approaching that time. And we see it all over the place. There was people that believe things that make absolutely no sense whatsoever. There was this LA Times article that came up not that long ago, a couple years ago, but it was basically talking, it says STDs are skyrocketing and officials believe racism to blame. So, the reason why there's all these SEDs has nothing to do with people are breaking God's law and they're committing immorality. It's not because of that. It's because of racism. And people believe this stuff, and it's being published. And this is a reputable mainstream newspaper. And this is these deceptions that are just becoming, and they're going to increase. They're going to be completely off the charts as time goes on. And if you look in Scripture, you see basically three types of deception. You have self-deception, where you basically believe whatever you want to believe. You have deceptions by Satan and his ministers. And one of the more unrecognized types of deceptions is where God himself deceives you. And what we're going to see is most of the time, it's usually a combination of all three, where you really want to believe something that isn't really true. Satan and his ministers make it very attractive for you to believe it. And then God does not give you the clarity of mind to come to your sentence and realizes this isn't true, but in fact throws in his own delusions. He allows you to do it. And a good example of this is over in Isaiah chapter 30 and verse 9. We can turn there real quick. Isaiah 30 verse 9. This is one of Isaiah's prophecies about the Israelites and the end time. And he's saying, this is a rebellious people, lying children. They're children who do not hear the law of the Lord, who say to their seers, see not, and to the prophets, do not prophesy to us right things, speak to us smooth things, prophesy to us illusions. Okay, well, that LA Times article, it was an illusion. Racism does not cause SEDs. And they had lots of statistics, but it was really ludicrous. But that's what people want to hear. Tell us, don't prophesy to us what's the truth. Speak to us smooth things, prophesy to us illusions, And as long as it's what we want to hear, it doesn't make any difference if it makes absolutely no sense, just as long as it's what we want to hear. And then if you turn back one page over to Isaiah 29, verse 9, he's on the same topic here. Isaiah is writing here, be stunned and amazed, blind your eyes and be blind. They are drunk not with wine, they stagger but not with strong drink. For the Lord has poured upon you the spirit of a deep sleep and has closed your eyes. He has covered the prophets, your rulers, and your seers. And so when you put chapters 29 and 30 together, what you see is God himself sends a spirit of deception upon those who are already wanting to believe the lie. They won't hear his law. They have no respect for him. He says they're lying children. And then God on top of it gives them a spirit of deception. And well, why does God do this? Why doesn't he open their eyes and expose them? Well, here's a perfect example. Intellectuals today have overwhelmingly believed and have taught there is no historical value to the Bible. If you look at some of these colleges and universities, they teach us all the time. They were teaching this to Noah in his comparative religion class, my son, that there's no historical value at all to the Bible. It's simply a book of inaccurate folklores and legends that were passed around the campfire up until around the time of the 9th century BC, when it was finally written down. Meaning everything up to 1 Kings has no more credibility than, say, Homer's Iliad. Right? It's just a bunch of fables. And this is overwhelmingly taught in the universities and colleges today. However, since the mid-1800s, we're talking like 170 years ago, they have dug up, archaeologists have dug up over almost 500,000 cuneiform clay tablets, and around the Middle East that go all the way back to 3500 BC. And this covers everything from the history of rulers to business transactions to a letter from a mom to a dad telling him, hey, how do we discipline Johnny? They were that commonly used. And when they compare these tablets and the passages in them to the Bible, they find out that in a historical setting, the Bible is 100% accurate as far as its historical accuracy. Does it represent the times of the day? And it does, overwhelmingly. To a T. But the intellectuals have decided amongst themselves the Bible is just a book of fables and has no historical value whatsoever. And they're just straight up lying. It's a straight up lie, but they get in their echo chamber and it's taught everywhere. And so the question arises, why would God give those same intellectuals sanity? Why would he give them the ability, when they're completely filled with their own self-deception in one area, why would he allow them to be completely rational in another area? Why would he do that? Well, he wouldn't. He has no reason to. And there's lots of examples of God doing this. One is over in 2 Thessalonians 2, verse 9. Let's turn there. And this is another end-time prophecy talking about the son of perdition, when these days would be fulfilled, over in 2 Thessalonians 2, verse 9. It says, even the one whose coming is according to the inner working of Satan, with all power, signs, and lying wonders, with all deceivableness of unrighteousness, and those who are perishing, because they did not receive the love of the truth, so they might be saved. And for this cause, the cause that they want to believe the lie, the cause that they don't love the truth, they love the lie. For this cause, God will send upon them a powerful deception that will cause them to believe the lie, so that they all may be judged who did not believe in the truth but took pleasure in unrighteousness. And so in this passage, you see all three methods of deception. You see the deceptions of Satan with his lying wonders, people with their own self-deceptions who they refuse to love the truth and to be saved. They want to believe the lie. And then you have, as a result of this, God also sends upon them a powerful delusion so that they will believe the lie. And these powerful deceptions that God sends to people who refuse to love the truth, I mean, that's their position, is really similar to when God hardened the Pharaoh's heart. Remember when the Pharaoh wouldn't allow the Israelites to leave, and he was in this deadlock with Moses. Neither one of them were going to budge. And then at the last second, he says, okay, I'll let you guys go. But then God goes and hardens his heart, and then he changes his mind. Well, why would God do that? Here Pharaoh's trying to do the right thing. He finally realized he was wrong, and he decided to, change his position, and we should let the people go. Well, because God wasn't going to allow the Pharaoh to make the smart play, the wise decision at the last second. I mean, think about it. The Pharaoh of Exodus, he had no respect for God. He had deceived the whole nation of Egypt to believe that he, in fact, was a god. Every time that the Pharaoh got up in the middle of the night, he stubbed his pinky toe on his way to the bathroom. He knew he wasn't a god, right? But he, at the same time, wanted everyone to believe that he was, and he deceived an entire nation to believe that. He didn't keep any of God's laws. He had no respect for the Israelites, or he wouldn't have killed all the Israelite boys. And so just because at a certain point in time the Pharaoh realized he was outmatched by Yahweh, and he realized the smart play at this point was to let the people go and then regroup to fight another day, God wasn't going to allow him to make that decision. He wasn't going to allow him to make the smart play just because he had no other options to make. My uncle Glenn is kind of in that same position. He was raised in the truth. He was taught the truth from my grandfather, just the same as we were. And yet, as soon as he turned 18, he was done. He wanted to party with the ladies and work on the Sabbath and do his own thing. He didn't necessarily believe it. He wanted to do his own thing, and he liked to party and drink and have a good time. So he abandoned all of it. Well, one time my brother and I are talking to him, and we go, "Hey, Uncle Glenn, there's reading the news lately, and there's all this stuff in the news about a united Europe, and the UK is leaving, and people are going to and fro, and knowledge is being increased." And we brought up a few other things, and we're like, this almost sounds like end-time Bible prophecy and all that stuff that you abandoned. And he says, well, if this all comes to fruition, what are you going to do? We asked him the question. And his response was very interesting, because he said, well, you know what, if this is true, I'll just repent at the last minute, start going back to church, and just slide in there into the kingdom, at the last minute, and everything will be good. God forgives everybody, right? Well, do you really think God's going to allow someone with that motivation to just slide into the kingdom at the last minute, who basically had no respect for God his way of life, and make the smart decision just because they have no other options? Well, of course not. But as we near the time of the end, come near to the time of the end, these deceptions are only going to increase. And they're going to be at a level such that even almost the elect might be deceived. That's how high the level of deceptions are going to be. And except for the righteous, most everybody out there is not going to be able to distinguish between heads or tail, or left or right, or up or down. It's going to be all a big fog to them. Daniel chapter 12, verse 10, you don't have to turn there, but it says, many shall be purified and made white. The wicked shall do wickedly, but none of the wicked will understand, but the wise shall understand. At the end time, only those who have overcome will understand. Only those who are completely honest with themselves, who are honest about their own sins, about their own shortcomings, about the changes they need to make, who take a good, honest look at themselves in the mirror every day and realize that they need to change their lives according to the book that we've been given, and who didn't lie to themselves to try and justify what they've done. Those are the individuals who are going to be wise and understand. But the wicked, they're not going to understand anyway. If you look at the main thing that distinguished King Saul and King David, it wasn't necessarily that one of them committed worse sins. You could make the argument that David did some pretty bad things. Well, the difference is David didn't justify it. He didn't make excuses. He didn't lie to himself and say, well, it was that woman. She seduced me over there. That's why I did these things. I'm not pointing at you, Fred. But
I'll point at you.
He owned up to his mistakes. He was honest with himself, and that's why he was allowed to be king. And Saul, he just made excuses every time. But as we near the time of the end, the deceptions are going to be at an all-time high. If you think there's a lot of fake news out there now, well, we haven't seen anything yet. As these deceptions continue to get more and more, they're going to get completely out of control. And it's imperative that we are completely honest with ourselves, that we yield ourselves to God's Spirit and we allow it to lead us into truth, and we continue to overcome on a daily basis, and we're honest to God in our prayers when we confess to Him. And let's turn to one last passage over in Acts 28. And this is where Paul's preaching to a group in Rome, and they wouldn't listen to anything he had to say, which we've had that situation before. And Acts 28, verse 26. And here he's once again quoting, I think it's Isaiah, and he says, "Go to this people, and in hearing you will hear but not understand, and seeing you will see and not perceive. For the hearts of this people have grown dull, their ears are hard of hearing, and their eyes have closed, lest they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears, lest they should understand with their hearts and turn, lest I should heal them." And so the people's hearts had grown dull. They were hard of hearing. They wouldn't hear. They purposely closed their eyes. And that's the situation we're going to see more and more of as we draw near to the return of Christ. Brethren, as the deceptions of this world continue to get worse and worse, we need to understand a lot of their problems began with self-deception, where they wouldn't believe the truth. We understand the Bible nowhere says Sunday, but everybody wants to believe it because it's what they're comfortable with. And we can't fall into that trap. We have to be completely honest with ourselves. We have to be honest with God. We have to look at that mirror every day and really rightly examine ourselves. And if we do this, we don't have to worry about these deceptions as they come up. The righteous are going to understand, but none of the wicked shall understand. And so as long as we're honest with ourselves and honest with God, we don't have to worry about these deceptions. Thank you.